For these 6 athletes, the game wasn't just a sport. It was their purpose, their dream, and the heartbeat of their community. But in the middle of the action, with fans watching and cheering them on, something went horribly wrong. These are the stories of athletes who died doing what they loved, right in front of the people who believed in them. It was June 17, 2014, and the afternoon sun blazed mercilessly over the dusty soccer field in São Bernardo do Campo, Brazil. The makeshift stadium buzzed with excitement as nearly 400 fans packed the weathered concrete bleachers, their voices creating a symphony of anticipation that echoed across the favela. Colorful banners fluttered in the humid breeze, and the smell of grilled meat from nearby food stalls mixed with the earthy scent of the well-worn pitch that measured exactly 100 yards long and 60 yards wide. Marcelo Silva adjusted his cleats one final time as he surveyed the field that had become his second home. At 28, the aspiring soccer player had spent the better part of a decade chasing his professional dreams while working double shifts at a local auto parts factory. His calloused hands told the story of countless hours spent both wielding wrenches and perfecting his ball control. Every spare reel went toward training fees, equipment, and the occasional bus fare to regional tryouts that never quite materialized into contracts. The regional tournament match represented everything Marcelo had worked toward. Scouts from 3 professional clubs had confirmed their attendance, and whispers circulated that this could be his breakthrough moment. His mother sat in her usual spot behind the home team's bench, clutching the same faded rosary she'd brought to every match since he was 12. His younger brother, Carlos, had closed his barbershop early to witness what they all hoped would be the beginning of Marcelo's professional career. Marcelo had been experiencing occasional chest tightness during training sessions over the past month, but he attributed it to the intense preparation regimen he'd adopted. His teammates noticed him breathing heavily after sprints, but in a culture where showing weakness meant losing opportunities, he kept his concerns private. In the 75th minute, with his team trailing 2-1, Marcelo received a pass near midfield and began one of his signature runs toward goal. The crowd rose to their feet as he dribbled past 2 defenders, his footwork as elegant as ever. Then, without warning or contact from any opponent, he suddenly stopped running and clutched his chest with both hands, his face contorted in obvious pain as he stumbled forward 2 steps before collapsing face first onto the sun-baked pitch. The stadium fell eerily silent as players from both teams gathered around Marcelo's motionless form. The referee immediately signaled for medical attention, but the volunteer nurses' limited equipment proved woefully inadequate for the crisis unfolding. Marcelo's breathing had become shallow and irregular, his skin taking on a grayish pallor that sent panic through everyone present. His mother's screams pierced the silence as she realized the severity of the situation. Carlos vaulted over the barrier and sprinted onto the field, dropping to his knees beside his brother's unconscious body. The visiting team's coach used his cell phone to call for an ambulance, but the remote location meant help was at least 20 minutes away. The volunteer nurse attempted CPR while players formed a protective circle around the scene. Marcelo's teammates took turns performing chest compressions, their faces streaked with tears and sweat as they fought desperately to save their friend. The crowd began chanting his name, their voices carrying across the favela like a prayer. When the ambulance finally arrived, paramedics worked frantically to stabilize Marcelo before the race to the hospital. At Hospital Municipal, doctors discovered that Marcelo had suffered a massive heart attack caused by an undiagnosed congenital heart defect. Despite 45 minutes of resuscitation efforts, he was pronounced dead at 6:47 p.m. The soccer community mourned deeply as news of Marcelo's death spread throughout São Bernardo do Campo. His mother established a foundation promoting cardiac screening for amateur athletes. It was August 12, 2016, and the afternoon sun streamed through the skylights of Elite Gymnastics Academy in Riverside, California. The spacious 8,000-square-foot facility hummed with activity as dozens of athletes practiced their routines on various apparatus, their movements creating a rhythmic symphony of controlled power and grace. The smell of chalk dust hung in the air, mixing with the faint scent of the foam pit that dominated one corner of the gym. A small group of family members and friends had gathered in the viewing area, watching through the large windows as their loved ones prepared for the upcoming regional competition. Jake Thompson wiped his palms on his grips as he mentally rehearsed the tumbling pass that had consumed his thoughts for weeks. At 24, the aspiring gymnast had dedicated his life to pursuing excellence in a sport that favored younger athletes with earlier starts and fresher bodies. His day job as a physical therapy assistant provided just enough income to cover the $400 monthly training fees and equipment costs, though it meant surviving on ramen noodles and sleeping on his coach's couch most nights. The upcoming regional competition represented Jake's final opportunity to qualify for nationals before aging out of his division. His coach, Maria Santos, had been working with him for 3 years, gradually rebuilding his technique after a devastating shoulder injury had derailed his college career. Jake's training partners had grown accustomed to his relentless work ethic and infectious enthusiasm. He arrived first every morning and stayed until the facility closed at 10 p.m., often practicing basic skills long after completing his formal training. His girlfriend, Sarah, watched nervously from the observation deck, having taken time off work to support him during this crucial training session. The tumbling pass consisted of a round-off back handspring into a double layout with a full twist, a combination that required split-second timing and absolute spatial awareness. Jake had successfully completed the skill dozens of times in practice, but the 42-foot tumbling strip demanded perfect execution every single time. Jake began his approach with characteristic intensity, his powerful strides building momentum as he neared the takeoff point. The round-off and back handspring executed flawlessly, launching him 12 feet into the air with the rotation speed necessary for the complex skill. For a moment, he appeared to be flying with perfect form, his body positioned textbook as he initiated the twisting motion. Then something went catastrophically wrong. Jake's spatial awareness, honed through years of training, suddenly abandoned him mid-flight. Instead of completing the planned rotation, he found himself disoriented and unable to locate the floor. His body continued twisting, but the timing was completely off, leaving him in a dangerous position as gravity took control. Jake crashed to the 8-inch thick mat with sickening force, his head and neck absorbing the full impact of his 165-pound body weight, combined with the rotational momentum. The sound of the collision echoed through the suddenly silent gym as his teammates watched in horror. Gasps and screams erupted from the viewing area. His body lay motionless in an unnatural position, arms splayed at odd angles and legs twisted beneath him. Maria reached him first, her years of emergency training kicking in as she assessed the situation. Jake's breathing was shallow and irregular, and a small pool of blood had begun forming beneath his head. She immediately called for someone to dial 911 while carefully checking for signs of consciousness without moving his neck. The paramedics arrived within 8 minutes, but Jake's condition had deteriorated rapidly. The impact had caused a severe basilar skull fracture with associated intracranial hemorrhaging, along with complete fractures of the C2 and C3 cervical vertebrae, resulting in high cervical spinal cord transection. Despite aggressive treatment in the ambulance and emergency room, the damage proved irreversible. Jake Thompson was pronounced dead at Riverside General Hospital at 4:23 p.m. The gymnastics community rallied around Jake's memory, establishing a scholarship fund for adult gymnasts pursuing competitive dreams. It was October 1st, 2017, and the crisp autumn air carried the scent of burning rubber and high-octane fuel across Piedmont Speedway in North Carolina. The quarter-mile oval track gleamed under the bright lights as nearly 2,000 fans filled the grandstands, their excitement building for the season's final race. The roar of engines warming up created a mechanical symphony that resonated through the surrounding hills. Tony Harris adjusted his helmet one final time as he surveyed the track from his position in the staging area. At 30, the aspiring race car driver had spent the better part of 2 decades working toward this moment, building his reputation, one local race at a time, while supporting himself as a mechanic at Davidson Auto Repair. His modified stock car represented years of weekend labor and every spare dollar he could scrape together, its bright blue paint job hiding countless hours of meticulous preparation. The Piedmont Championship Series had been Tony's obsession for 3 seasons, each year bringing him closer to the consistent top 5 finishes that might attract attention from regional touring series. Tonight's race carried extra significance as representatives from 2 NASCAR Xfinity Series teams had confirmed their attendance. drawn by reports of Tony's aggressive driving style and mechanical expertise. Tony's family occupied their usual spot in the front row of the grandstand, his wife Sarah clutching their 4-year-old daughter Emma, while his parents displayed a hand-painted banner reading, "Harris Racing number 47. The local racing community had embraced Tony as one of their own, appreciating his willingness to help younger drivers and his reputation for clean, competitive racing. As the field took the green flag, Tony settled into 5th position and began plotting his strategy for moving forward. The early laps unfolded without incident as drivers felt out their cars and established racing lines. Tony's patient approach paid dividends as more aggressive competitors made mistakes, allowing him to inherit 3rd place by lap 15 without taking unnecessary risks. With 12 laps remaining, Tony executed a perfect inside pass entering turn 1, taking the lead to thunderous applause from the grandstand. His family screamed with joy as he opened a small gap over the pursuing field, his smooth driving style allowing him to maintain momentum through the technical sections. On lap 36, disaster struck without warning. Tony's right rear tire, weakened by the abrasive track surface and speeds approaching 90 miles per hour, suffered a catastrophic failure entering turn 3. The sudden loss of grip sent his car spinning violently toward the outside wall, the centrifugal force making correction impossible. The impact was devastating as Tony's car struck the concrete barrier nearly head-on, before ricocheting back across the track into the path of oncoming traffic. 2 other cars made contact with his spinning vehicle, creating a multi-car accident that brought out the red flag and sent emergency crews scrambling onto the track surface. Tony's car had absorbed tremendous impact energy, but the safety cage had been compromised by the initial wall contact. The secondary collisions had caused additional structural damage that overwhelmed the protective systems. Track medical personnel worked frantically to extract him from the wreckage, but the injuries proved unsurvivable. Tony Harris was pronounced dead at the track medical center at 9:47 p.m. The racing community mourned the loss of one of its most respected competitors. Piedmont Speedway implemented additional safety measures, including improved barrier systems and enhanced medical response protocols. It was March 15, 2015, and the evening air inside the Harlem Community Center crackled with electric energy as 200 fans packed the gymnasium for the championship game of the local basketball league. The polished hardwood court gleamed under the bright fluorescent lights, measuring exactly 94 feet long and 50 feet wide, while hand-painted banners celebrating the season's achievements hung from the 20-foot ceiling. Marcus Lee laced up his worn sneakers in the cramped locker room, his pre-game ritual unchanged after years of competitive basketball. At 26, the aspiring player had become the heart and soul of the Uptown Warriors, leading them through an undefeated season that had captured the imagination of the entire neighborhood. His day job as a youth counselor at a local community center barely covered his $1,200 monthly expenses, but basketball remained his passion and his pathway to something greater. The championship game represented the culmination of Marcus's amateur career and potentially his final opportunity to attract attention from overseas professional leagues. Several scouts from European clubs had confirmed their attendance, drawn by reports of his exceptional court vision and leadership abilities. Marcus's family filled an entire section of the bleachers, his mother wearing the same lucky jersey she'd worn to every game since his high school days. His younger sister had driven up from college specifically for the championship. Marcus had been experiencing occasional dizzy spells during practice over the past 2 weeks, but he attributed them to the intense training regimen and late nights spent studying game film. His teammates noticed him taking longer breaks between drills, but in a culture where admitting weakness could cost playing time, he kept his concerns private. The game began with explosive intensity as both teams traded baskets in a display of offensive firepower. Marcus's leadership was evident immediately as he orchestrated the Warriors' attack with precision passing and timely scoring. By halftime, he had recorded 12 points and 8 assists, while holding the Bulldogs' star player to just 6 points through aggressive defense. Midway through the third quarter, with the Warriors leading 67-62, Marcus brought the ball up court during a fast break opportunity. As he crossed the center line at full speed, he suddenly stumbled and fell to his knees, clutching his chest with both hands. The gymnasium fell silent as players from both teams stopped mid-play, confusion quickly turning to concern as Marcus collapsed completely onto the hardwood floor. The referee immediately called for medical attention, but the community center's resources consisted of a volunteer trainer with basic first aid supplies. Marcus's breathing had become labored and irregular, his skin taking on a pale, clammy appearance that sent panic through the crowd. His teammates formed a protective circle around him as the trainer attempted to assess his condition. Someone in the crowd called 911 while Marcus's mother pushed through the crowd to reach her son. His body had gone completely limp, and his eyes had rolled back, showing only the whites. The trainer began CPR as players and fans watched in stunned silence, the only sounds being the rhythmic compressions and desperate prayers whispered throughout the gymnasium. Paramedics arrived within 12 minutes and immediately took over resuscitation efforts. They worked frantically to stabilize Marcus before transporting him to Harlem Hospital, but his condition continued to deteriorate during the ambulance ride. Despite 40 minutes of aggressive treatment, Marcus Lee was pronounced dead at 8:34 p.m. from sudden cardiac arrest. The basketball community rallied around Marcus's memory, establishing a scholarship fund for young athletes pursuing basketball dreams. It was July 20th, 2016, and the late afternoon sun cast dancing reflections across the pristine waters of the Flamengo Aquatic Center in Rio de Janeiro. The Olympic-sized pool facility buzzed with activity as dozens of swimmers prepared for the regional qualifying meet, their movements creating rhythmic splashes that echoed off the 30-foot ceiling. The smell of chlorine mixed with the humid Brazilian air that drifted through the open windows. Elena Rodriguez adjusted her goggles one final time as she stood at the edge of the 10-meter-high diving platform, surveying the crystal-clear water 33 feet below. At 22, the aspiring swimmer had dedicated her life to perfecting her technique in both competitive swimming and diving, training 6 hours daily while working part-time at a local surf shop to cover her expenses. Her compact 5'4" frame belied the explosive power she generated during her dives. The regional competition represented Elena's final opportunity to qualify for the national team before aging out of her division. Her coach, Roberto Silva, had been working with her for 4 years, gradually building her confidence on the higher platforms after a minor injury had shaken her nerve 2 seasons earlier. Elena's family occupied their usual spot in the front row of the spectator area, her parents having driven 3 hours from their small coastal town to witness what they hoped would be her breakthrough performance with her. Elena had been experiencing minor headaches during training over the past week, but she attributed them to the stress of competition preparation and the intense summer heat. As Elena prepared for her final dive, she went through her usual pre-dive routine, visualizing the complex sequence of movements required for the reverse 2.5 somersault. The crowd quieted as she raised her arms above her head, signaling her readiness to begin. Elena launched herself backward from the platform with explosive force, her body rotating with the precision that had taken years to develop. The first somersault executed perfectly, her tight tuck position generating the rotational speed necessary for the complex dive. As she entered the second rotation, something went catastrophically wrong. Instead of maintaining her controlled descent, Elena's spatial orientation became compromised mid-flight. Her body position shifted unexpectedly, causing her to over-rotate and lose the precise angle needed for a safe water entry. Rather than entering the water vertically with her arms extended, she struck the surface at a dangerous angle with tremendous force. The impact occurred with Elena's head and neck making contact with the water first, but at such an acute angle that the surface tension acted like concrete. The force of her 115-pound body traveling at nearly 35 miles per hour created a devastating collision that snapped her neck instantly. The sickening sound of the impact echoed throughout the facility as spectators gasped in horror. Elena's body went completely limp upon contact, sinking beneath the surface as blood began to cloud the previously pristine water. Pool lifeguards dove in immediately, reaching her within seconds, but her injuries were already beyond any hope of survival. They pulled her unconscious form to the pool deck, where the facility's medical staff began emergency resuscitation efforts. Her parents rushed from the stands as paramedics arrived and took over treatment. Elena's breathing had stopped completely, and her pulse was barely detectable. The trauma to her cervical spine had severed her spinal cord at the second vertebra, causing immediate respiratory failure. Despite 25 minutes of aggressive resuscitation efforts, Elena Rodriguez was pronounced dead at the pool facility at 4:47 p.m. The diving competition was immediately canceled. The swimming community mourned Elena's loss deeply. It was November 10, 2018, and the crisp autumn air carried the sounds of marching bands and cheering crowds across Memorial Stadium in Austin, Texas. The Friday night lights illuminated the 100-yard field as nearly 3,000 fans filled the metal bleachers for the semi-final playoff game of the local adult football league. The smell of barbecue from tailgating parties mixed with the familiar scent of freshly cut grass and autumn leaves. David Johnson adjusted his shoulder pads one final time as he surveyed the field from the sideline, his breath visible in the 45-degree evening air. At 29, the aspiring football player had become the cornerstone of the Austin Wildcats defense, leading them through their most successful season in franchise history. His day job as a personal trainer at a local gym provided steady income, but football remained his true passion and his connection to dreams of professional opportunities. The playoff game represented everything David had worked toward over 5 seasons with the Wildcats. Several scouts from arena football leagues had confirmed their attendance, drawn by reports of his exceptional tackling ability and leadership on defense. David's family occupied their usual section behind the team bench, his wife Jennifer holding their 6-year-old son Michael, while his parents displayed a banner reading, "Johnson number 54 Defense." David had been experiencing occasional headaches following practice sessions over the past month, but he attributed them to the physical demands of his position and the stress of playoff preparation. The game began with typical playoff intensity as both teams fought for early momentum. David's presence was felt immediately as he recorded 2 tackles for loss in the first quarter, his aggressive style disrupting the Hurricanes' timing. By halftime, his defensive unit had held the high-powered offense to just 14 points, keeping the Wildcats within striking distance. The fourth quarter intensified as both teams recognized the season-ending implications of every play. With 8 minutes remaining and the Wildcats trailing 21-17, the Hurricanes faced a crucial 3rd and long situation. The quarterback dropped back to pass, scanning the field for an open receiver. David recognized the play development and charged forward, timing his rush perfectly to pressure the throw. As the quarterback released the ball, a pulling guard blindsided David with a devastating block that caught him completely off guard. Gasps rippled through the bleachers, and someone screamed as David's body hit the turf. The collision was violent and immediate. David's head snapped backward with tremendous force as the 280-pound lineman's shoulder pad made direct contact with his face mask. The impact drove him backward and down, his helmet striking the artificial turf with a sickening thud that could be heard throughout the stadium. David's body went completely rigid upon impact, his arms extending unnaturally as his nervous system responded to the catastrophic brain trauma. The neurological posturing was immediately recognizable to the team's medical staff as a sign of severe head injury. His breathing became irregular and labored as pressure built inside his skull. The stadium fell silent as players from both teams gathered around David's motionless form. The team physician rushed onto the field, immediately recognizing the severity of the situation, as David showed no response to verbal commands or physical stimuli. His pupils were dilated and unresponsive, indicating massive intracranial pressure. Paramedics arrived within 6 minutes and worked frantically to stabilize David before transport. The helicopter medical team was called due to the severity of his condition, but David's neurological function continued to deteriorate during the flight to Austin Trauma Center. Despite emergency surgery to relieve pressure on his brain, the damage proved irreversible. David Johnson was pronounced dead at 11:23 p.m. from traumatic brain injury and massive cerebral hemorrhaging. The football community mourned the loss of one of its most respected players. Thanks for watching. Just when you think you've heard the most heartbreaking sports tragedies, we're just getting started. Click the next video for the next stories that will leave you questioning how quickly dreams can turn into nightmares.